Welcome to New Reality Awakening, where seekers become finders and stories become transformations. Each week we open the doorway to a new vibration, sharing wisdom, healing, and awakening from the visionaries of the New Reality TV platform. This is your gateway to raising your vibration and remembering who you truly are. This is where we remember that we are consciousness discovering itself. We are love awakening to love. We are New Reality Awakening.
Welcome to New Reality Awakening, the show where we go straight to the source. Each episode, we sit down with the creators behind New Reality TV to cut through the noise and get clear on three things: what they're putting into the world, why it actually matters right now, and how it connects to the bigger shifts happening in human consciousness. These are focused, no-fluff conversations, not origin myths, not guru speak, just real people doing meaningful work and the ideas behind it. So if you're curious about where consciousness, culture, and personality intersect, you are in the right place. And today I am super excited about our guest. She is the creator of the show The Eyes Have It, and her whole modality is something really unique and incredibly interesting. Welcome to the show, Amy Dougherty.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's really an honor to have this conversation with you today.
I'm very excited that you're here. And I love your show. I love everything about it. And before I start talking about it and giving it away incorrectly, why don't you tell us in a sort of a cosmic nutshell, what is The Eyes Have It?
So The Eyes Have It is The Eyes Have It, Unlocking Your Ancestral Code with Amy. And it's all about, what do your eyes reveal about your ancestral epigenetic patterns? So looking at gifts, talents, as well as unresolved ancestral traumas that might show up in your life on a regular basis, like not being listened to, or somebody who can't get your name right ever, and it just happens over and over and over again, or petty jealousies, or getting cut out of the will. There's so many of them to choose from, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, no. That's great, because so many people need to hear these messages, and they have the different types of needs. So you've identified kind of who this show is good for. Who do you think it wouldn't really sync with?
People who feel like it's really palm reading, and who are really set in that phase that they feel like, well, this is woo-woo, and therefore it's not valid. And I actually was just at a genealogical conference, one of the largest in the world, if not the biggest, at the Roots Tech conference with 15,000 people. And we had a lot of people asking that, like, where's the science behind this? Where did it come from? And so thankfully we were able to quote a number of aspects of it from like a scientist in Sweden who compared the eyes to the Myers-Briggs personality assessments going against actual standardized testing, academic testing. We compared the motivation rings to the Clifton Strengths Finder 2.0. So looking at what are the true gifts and talents that show up in the eyes. And so, yeah, the only person who might be like, I'm just not that interested, people who maybe aren't that interested in their ancestry, or those who just think they'll never get a picture of their eyes. And sometimes they're the best ones, because when they do get it and they get to look at their eyes up close, they're just so amazed. I had a man in tears at Roots Tech. He was like, my eyes are beautiful. You showed them to me for the first time.
It's really an eye-opening experience, huh?
It really is a great idea.
We're channeling Will here.
Yeah, we are, since you couldn't join us.
Exactly. So what is it, like, how did you prepare to do this work? You referred to some different scientists. So what about you? What was your training?
So I was doing survival skills training in Africa. And when I came back to the US, I wanted to continue working with children, but I didn't have a college degree. And I was putting together a program regarding self-esteem. And I went to a class with a gentleman who was teaching about conscious language. People who say, I'll never win. I can't find love. I'll never get the perfect job, that kind of thing. And he was doing something called biooptic holography. So looking at the layers of the eyes for belief systems and belief patterns. And I was like, well, that's just the coolest thing.
Wow.
So he said eyes changed all the time. He'd come from iridology, looking at the health through the eyes. And he said they changed all the time. But then he didn't have any photos of it. So I was like, So I went and I studied with 4 other people. I just kept going with person after person after person after person until finally I got to someone who was working with ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents, and birth order. And that's when I realized when we're looking in the eyes and we see a pattern, for example, that is the area of competition with siblings, with sisters, it doesn't mean you get sisters. It means your ancestor was in a female competitive environment.
Oh, wow.
Catty jealousy. How come Karen always gets this? How come Karen always gets that? No matter who it comes from, or it can be creative competition, that right brain competitiveness, creative, those cooking and crafting shows, where they're actually competing, that is so at 4 o'clock in your left eye.
Wow. So how do you know, and here's, I'm going to, play Will's skeptic role. I've seen you've done readings on my eyes and they're incredible. And the things you've shown me are just fantastic. But how do you know that it's not like, well, that could be an image of an ancestor, but maybe it's not? Like, how do you know?
I don't. How was that for being direct and honest? You promised the cut to the chase.
Yes.
We have enough people who have literally pulled out a photograph of an ancestor or said, oh my gosh, that's my great-grandfather or my great-grandmother or my great-aunt Lily. But we've also had people say, well, I think that was one of my guides, or I think that was a former life, or I think that was, I don't know who that was. I have no idea who that is. We don't have that ancestry in our family to the best of my knowledge. And so we don't have enough people who know their information to really categorize that. So as we talked about, things like what does the color of your eyes say about you, or the motivational rings, or the structure, or the pupils, those things we can bank into science and we can bank into, the whole optic networking to the brain, that kind of thing. But when it comes to things like why do we see your great Uncle Ralph at 3 o'clock in your eye, that one it's kind of in that woo-woo zone. Mm-hmm. But I also think of Masaru Emoto's work with water, where he freezes the crystals and you introduce I love you to the water and it changes shape, and you introduce I hate you to the water and it changes shape. Well, the eyes are full of moisture and liquid. And so particularly reflective images, we're sure there's some kind of that interaction happening. And we just hope to provoke science one day to take a closer look at it, so they can give us the reasoning why we're getting these images, why we're getting these other things that are showing up in eyes.
Well, that's incredible, because I remember as a kid learning that if you break your arm or you break your leg, you can see that, or that trauma in your eyes. Mm-hmm. And then hearing you talk about this, it's kind of putting those, or I don't know, connecting those dots. Mm-hmm. And something traumatic that emotionally or spiritually, I can see that. And then, so we're talking about like epigenetics, or like the inherited ancestral DNA and that trauma showing up in your eyes. And that's just really amazing. It's so interesting.
And that's absolutely it. So while you're talking about you break an arm and you see it in your eye, what we're looking at is if you found yourself locked in because a door or window malfunctioned when you were a child, if you knew your ancestral history, you would find an ancestor somewhere in the last 2 to 4 or 3 to 5 generations who found themselves locked in because something malfunctioned, compared to someone locking them in intentionally, right? So now if you were locked in the shed by your brothers and they were like, oh, this is funny, ha, 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 then in that case, you're looking at maybe where the ancestor was in steerage on a ship, or incarcerated, or roped in the outhouse, thinking it would be funny, but now a bear shows up and starts knocking the outhouse over, and it becomes a very terrifying situation. Wow. And that situation will reenact in your life of somebody locking you in, thinking it's funny. So many times we're dealing with a trauma that in our ancestors' time was life-changing or life-threatening, but in our time, it's just annoying.
Wow. Gosh, that reminds me, and I don't know how this popped in my head, but maybe you sent it to me. Years ago, I was playing around with a friend. I don't know what we were doing. It was like a long time ago. I was probably maybe in my early teens. We were wrestling around the ground. And I remember he grabbed my arms and held them down. And at first it was kind of funny, but then I lost it. Like I had this huge anger, panic, anxiety, freaked out, lost my mind. And it was for 5 seconds, my friend that we had just been playing around with. And that would totally explain it.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're hitting it right on the head. It's those traumas reenacting. And so when we look at the eyes, we're looking at your trigger map and your treasure map. So it's really how you respond to it now. So especially for adopted kids who don't know anything about their ancestors' triggers, we can just look at what triggers are happening in their world and trace it back and say, here's what you're really looking at. So this isn't your fault. You're not some magnet to disaster. This is just something that's happening, and you're wired with an extra response key that says, this is a threat to us. It causes us drama and trauma.
Wow. That's, oh my gosh. So with all the work that you've done with this type, with the eyes and the photographs and the readings, can you give us an example of someone where this has really just solved a problem or changed their lives or had some sort of a dramatic effect?
Well, I'll tell you one that's probably extra dramatic and not the norm. This was in, I was going to say Louisville, but I think it was in Lexington, Kentucky, a few years back. And she had images in her eyes. So ancestral images will show up in the eyes. Sometimes you can see what looks just like a real live photograph of a person in your eye. It's just in there. Kind of hard to explain, but she had one of those. But when we see an image from behind, as if we're looking at the profile of somebody walking away from us, it typically represents where there's a missing line to the family. So I was doing this reading for this gal, and she had, images of missing people. They were from behind. So it can be that the records building burned to the ground. It can be that the child was a foundling and there was no paperwork, or the father isn't who we think it was, or they maybe changed their name back in the day when you could just change your name and identity because there weren't fingerprints and driver's licenses and those things. But somehow there's no line. There's DNA match, but there's no line. She went out and found 3 missing aunts she'd never known about, a whole missing line to her family. And I actually can't even tell you how she did it, but she started with questioning all these things from the reading and then discovered all these aspects. We've also had countless people come back. I just had one last weekend where your parents' experience of their time in utero with you shows up in the eyes. So in your daughter's eyes, you'll see your experience of your pregnancy with her, and in your husband's eyes, you'll see his aspect of the pregnancy with her. And I've had countless people come back later and they're like, no, there weren't any early traumas before age 2 or 3. And I was like, well, you won't remember them. This is pre-conscious memories. When your brain does not remember things like changing your diaper or falling down, it's pre-conscious memory. And I've had countless people come back with a story from their parents that they knew nothing about, where they were knocked out or knocked out cold, or their parents had a fight when they got pregnant. I mean, just there's really where you see the earth-shattering changes, those in utero resolving of something that's maybe never been discussed.
Oh, wow. Gosh, I never thought about that, even the in utero. Wow. So has there been anything, before you started this work, was there any sort of belief system or even just specific modality or thought that you had that after doing this work you no longer identify with?
Well, that's a great point. I guess all the self-help for resolving, I'm going to say this correctly, for resolving traumas. I guess when certain traumas that I look at now are cellular, they're a cellular memory, perhaps from time in utero or some early experience where it's an actual cellular memory. So, they always say, tell yourself you love you until you do, or, positive talk and positive thoughts, and they're wonderful. But when there's an underlying cellular belief that you weren't wanted because your parents had a fight when they were first pregnant with you that you know nothing about, but your every cell screams, I wasn't wanted. That's really where this work is, the rubber hits the road, right? Where finally a parent can understand why their child can't hear I love you from them. And when a child can finally understand why they've felt off with one parent all these generations. And now, as an adult or as a teenager, you're like, oh, it makes perfect sense. It's not that there's something wrong with me. It's not that it's my fault. I've picked this up out of this cellular memory, and it was just a misunderstanding. It was a story that was never finished.
Oh, gosh.
We were scared to death. We didn't want a baby for anything. But the minute we heard your heartbeat, the minute we held you, we were so glad. But that's a conversation that doesn't happen because nobody wants to say they didn't want their child when they got pregnant, completely understandably. But in the eyes, it tells us, here's the key. Just unlock that little door. Just unlock that little subconscious thread and that cellular memory, and you can have a whole different experience.
Oh, that's incredible. God, what a fantastic tool. I want to talk a little bit about your show, but before, one last question. Is there this is a relatively, I want to say small field, I would say. Is it, so first of all, is it Igenics or Irigenetics?
Igenics. You had it correct. Igenics.
Okay. Oh, good, good. For the people that you've spoken with that are asking about your work, what's a common misconception that they might have?
Misconception. Well, one misconception is that there's going to be no ancestral images in their eyes.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny when it happens. You'll be like, look, and you're like, oh my God, there's somebody in my eye. And then they might even be panicked. And you're like, I told you there was. And they're like, yeah, but there's a guy there. There's a guy there at 3:00. Who is that? So that's probably one. And the other is about doing health, that in Igenics, we don't look at health. We didn't study health. We didn't go into the health aspects. And my feeling is that the eye is like any map. You can have a demographic map, a street map, a altitude map. You can have all these different maps of the same piece of land giving you different information. It doesn't have to fight, right?
Oh,
so when I talk to iridologists and they tell me this health aspect or that health aspect or whatever, I don't say, wow, no, in my world, it's this. We're looking at different factors, weighting them differently, kind of thing. And I don't expect that Igenics itself will ever go into health aspects, though people may train in the health aspects and train in the ancestral aspects. I don't see the two merging, but you never know. I mean, the universe is a big universe.
You never know. I mean, the things that we're experiencing today were just dreams, 25 years ago.
Right. Exactly.
So, and I'm so glad you're doing this. So let's talk about your show. First of all, when someone turns it on, they get on New Reality, they click on the eyes habit. What can they expect to see?
Well, they'll see me reading different people's eyes. That's one aspect you'll see. So if you look at, for example, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, who also has a show on New Reality TV, you'll see us reading her eyes and the things that she wasn't aware of, but you'll also get her aspect as a licensed professional, right? Watching and revealing what her eyes reveal. We did do some episodes comparing eyes to human design, comparing eyes to astrology, comparing to different aspects of the world that are out there, numerology or whatever, just because why not? We know we don't know everything that we're seeing in the eyes yet. We know if we've uncovered this much, we know there's way more. So you'll see some that are like examples of comparison. You'll see some that are unique episodes like twins, where one of the twins was lost before they were born. And she had not two different colors like me, but she had two different structures, which you don't see very often. And again, it's something I'd love to have science or the medical industry take a look at. But two different eye structures are two different personalities or two different operating systems. So it's really interesting to see it in one person when they have two different things going on in there.
Wow. Yeah. Now I'm curious about you. We definitely need to spend some more time together.
True.
So, what was it that made you say, okay, now's the time. I need to put this out in the world? Was there a calling you were receiving? What made you do that?
My husband.
Your husband.
My husband. He said, Amy, nobody knows about this. So when I was in Colorado, I was working with Department of Corrections, Boys and Girls Club, social workers as part of my nonprofit. And when I came out here to Virginia, he said, you've got to do these shows, these expos and holistic fairs, because nobody knows this even exists. And I was like, well, honey, I don't know if the world's ready to know there's ghosts in their eyes just yet. But it has been a resounding success ever since. Every show is with a line. And so, like you said, now comes the time for distribution, because I can only see so many people.
Right.
It becomes more a part of, it's probably time for me to start handing this off to others so that they can expand around the world.
Well, that is a great idea, because I know it took me 2 years to get in to see you in a couple of different spirit festivals. Like, there's lines wrapped around waiting for people to get into your little camera and get the pictures.
Don't take it personally. You're not the only one. I just had some people say they waited 3 years to get to me. I was like,
well, that's fantastic, though. Congratulations for that. And now you have a little short on New Reality. Also, if you guys check this out, you can go to the short section, and Amy will actually teach you how to take your own eye photograph. That's great. So you don't have to stand in that long line.
Yeah, and it's really quite simple. There's a really easy way to do it. So there's the hard way, and then there's the not so hard way. It's all about light. All about the light.
So who do you hope to reach with the eyes habit?
Anybody struggling with family dynamics. If they knew in the beginning, especially adoption situations like my own, where I didn't meet my genetic family till I was in my 50s, but if they knew from the beginning, this is not a morning baby,
Yeah.
This baby's going to need till 10 a.m. for you to drop off any big surprises, right? Or this baby's going to be hoppy boppy at 5:30, like every day. I mean, if you knew those little personality things in the very beginning, you could be prepared for it. And especially in an adoption situation where the adopted parents can be thinking, was this us? Did we do it wrong? Whereas if they were in their biological family, it's just, well, this is the way it is, right? These are
Yeah.
kids that have this gene pool. But when you bring in a child who's not from your genetic line and you don't know, you start second guessing. Is it me? Why can't I get along with this child? Why do they think there's something wrong with them? And to really anybody who's working in any kind of child placement, I think, or family dynamics that are struggling, it's really a key ingredient.
Great. So if you're struggling with a new baby or an old uncle, you can get a lot of information by checking out your eyes. Amy, thank you so much. Any last comments before we got to kind of wrap it up because we're running out of time, but anything else you want to say?
Your ancestors have waited your whole life for this moment. Go take your eye pictures.
Take them, send them in. I did it. It's amazing. And if you want to check out her show, you can see Amy Dougherty on The Eyes Have It on newrealitytv.com. You can catch her latest episode or you can binge all of them. And I would recommend both. Thank you so much, Amy. It was a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again and checking out the farm.
That's right. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been great to be here, and it's been great to be on New Reality.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, that's the kind of work we'd like to spotlight here, not because it has all the answers, but because it asks better questions and invites real engagement. If this conversation sparked something from you, you can explore more of Amy Dougherty's work on newrealitytv.com. And if you're someone who's curious about consciousness, growth, and where personal responsibility actually meets spiritual exploration, this is what we do here. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.